All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Pando Days 24-25 Spring Team Project Premieres. My name is Matthew Manos. I'm the head of a design firm here in Los Angeles called Very Nice, faculty at USC, and then most importantly, a longtime Pando maniac. I am your host today. Pando Days is the program that turns academic work into real-world solutions for impact in your community and world. All Pando Days premiere events follow a standard format. Each team is given 15 to 20 minutes to present summaries of their projects, and after that, we enter about a half hour of Q&A and open dialogue from a panel of experts. Each of these events are recorded. Over the summer, the recordings, along with all the project materials, will be posted on each team's dedicated webpage, which you can find at pandopopulous.com. The projects are then judged by a distinguished panel of specialists, with honors and prizes passed out, as well as networking opportunities galore happening at the Pando Sustainability Awards. So please stay tuned for more details on that. Today we'll be hearing again from Cal State University Northridge. This project is led by Sheila Steinberg and is called Telling the Story of Sustainable San Fernando Valley in Preparation for the Olympics: Culture, People, and Places to Visit. Can't wait to hear more. Sheila and team, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Manos. Great to see you. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here with my students from CSUN. We love working with Pando. We are Pando fanatics in the making. This is our first time interacting with you all. So I taught a class this past semester called environmental geography. And one thing that I wanted to do when I taught the class was to make it more of an applied experience. And so with full disclosure, we had talked to Siobhan. Siobhan came in and talked to the class and shared her very interesting work with 99 communities and getting ready for the Olympics. And she was a guest speaker in our class. And the students got very inspired, and we started talking about what would be a way that we could design a project where students go out and they get to link together three things that are very important to me and to the Institute of Sustainability here at Cal State Northridge, which are local stories, the Olympics, and sustainability. We all know that when we think about sustainability, there are many different definitions, but one thing that gets often left out is the idea of local people and local knowledge. And so I was in conversation with Siobhan before the start of the semester, I was like, Siobhan, I want my students to do something applied where they can actually make a difference. And you're working on the Olympics, and what can we do? And so we co-crafted this interesting proposal for them to do. So they basically were broken into teams of 4 to 5 people. They would go out into the community. They applied their geographic skills to understand people and place. I said, let's get after some of those unique areas that don't have much information on them and tell stories about them, collect photos, and put it all together using GIS and a particular Esri product called Story Maps, which I best describe as PowerPoint on steroids. So I'm going to turn it over to my students pretty quick here, but we really feel that this is a way, with the influx, with the Super Bowl coming, World Cup coming, and Olympics, the last major event coming, we feel that people are going to want to explore the area, and they don't always need to go to the high profile tourist locations like Hollywood, etc. But let's highlight the San Fernando Valley. Our mission here at the Institute is to move forward the idea of a sustainable San Fernando Valley. What does that mean? It means riding public transit, micromobility. It means, of course, having an awareness of the health of the environment, the health of the people. So you'll see aspects of that woven throughout, and preserving local people and place by telling the stories of how local environments evolve. Sometimes there's environmental pollution, but then how do communities come back from that? How do they maintain economic strength? So I'm stopping now, and I'm going to turn it to my first group, which I believe is M and Jen Yu, correct? Are you guys ready to go? Okay, take it away.
All right, so I am going to share my story map first thing. Let me know if you guys can see it. Okay, fantastic. So to start off, hi, I'm M, and my partner's Jen Yu. So our project focused on the Metro G/Orange line. This is a bus rapid transit line in the San Fernando Valley that runs from North Hollywood all the way to Chatsworth. This corridor was initially a rail line owned by the Southern Pacific Railroad that ran passenger service. As rail fell out of fashion and favor, this corridor was eventually sold to the LA Metro. And then in 2005, it became the bus rapid transit line that we see today. Today, this is a 17.7-mile corridor with buses and a ridership of approximately 4.4 million. Right now, looking towards the future, the Metro has initiated a $668 million improvement project for the line. With a little bit of the background out of the way, Jen, you can go through our methodology for our project.
Yes. Hello everyone. I'm Jenny, and I'm going to go through the methodology for our project. So we explore the G line through the lens of history, food, and community. We started by gathering data from valuable sources, including a Sebon fire insurance map and maps of the Southern Pacific Railroad and Kashiba's BRT system to show how the G line fits into a broader transportation story. Then we focused on restaurants near each stop. We researched and selected stops that were within 1 mile locally or family owned and connected to the community. After narrowing down the list, we visited the restaurants in person to check for accessibility and authenticity. If they didn't meet our criteria, we removed them. For those that did, we took photos and collected anonymous quotes from locals to add personal voices to our story map. So, by combining historical maps, community data, and firsthand experiences, we were able to highlight the relationship between place, people, and transit. And finally, we added a survey to explore G-line ridership, which could help inform planning efforts ahead of the Olympics. Yes, thank you, Anne.
Thank you. So ridership and surrounding area to the G line can be examined through demographic data. This first map we have is the Esri Diversity Index, which is the likelihood that two randomly selected people within the same zip code will be different races or ethnicities. The darker shade, the higher the diversity indices. North of the G line has a clearer, higher diversity index than south of it. This next map also shows some interesting patterns. So this is a map of predominant ethnic groups in the San Fernando Valley. Another pattern emerges, predominantly Latino communities north and east of the G line right here. Orange translates to predominantly non-Hispanic white, and then blue is predominantly Latino, bright yellow is predominantly Asian communities, and darker colors means the predominance is stronger. So then we move on to a guided tour of the G line. So this is in order of the different stops so viewers can better familiarize themselves with the line as a whole rather than just their destination. Two of these stops, Woodley and Balboa, are at the north end of Sepulveda Basin, an Olympic theater of sport. The rapid transit line will be crucial for managing crowds at these types of events. And so you can familiarize yourself with all the stops from North Hollywood to Chatsworth. Then finally, at the bottom, you make our way to our restaurant recommendations map. These are all within 1 mile of a stop, local or family owned, and connected with the community. We decided to include the Great Wall of Los Angeles on our map as a cultural destination since it was so close to the line. And each destination, if you click on it, if it'll load, it includes a picture that we took, eventually it'll show up, as well as a local explanation, review, etc. So here's one from Springbok Bar and Grill, picture of it, as well as a review from the Los Angeles Daily News. And then we also took a video of us at the stops exploring them, but we were short on time, so we will leave that out.
And thank you so much. That was a really wonderful explanation of that story map. Again, the work was done by about 4 or 5 folks. We have 2 of those represented today from the group, so thank you so much. Moving on to the next group, that would be Pam Picaro. We can hear you.
Hi.
Hi.
Um, for our project, we did stories from the East San Fernando Valley. And here's the video. The video, let's see. Let me see if I can get the actual. Okay, so stories from the East San Fernando Valley. We showcase the vibrant culture, history, and community and identity of all different kinds of neighborhoods in the East Fernando Valley. And there were 4 of us: Rebecca Thompson, Ali Reza Jafari, myself, and Nuruddin Muhammad. And each of us did different aspects of the valley. We started off with some of the history, a little bit of history, and then we moved into Ali Reza did the Persian and Armenian communities of the valley and did extensive research on that. And then we also did research on the Latino culture in the valley. This is quite a long videos and maps, so I'm not going to get too heavy into it, but then we also did some research on the Tatavian people of the northern San Fernando Valley. And I did a couple of interviews with Jesus Alvarez, who works at CSUN, and I met him through Dr. Steinberg. So we did a few videos with him, which you can see on this project. Here we put some collages here, some aspects of things that he talked about, including Rudy Ortega, who's one of the leaders of the families and his ancestors, who have been living in this San Fernando Valley for thousands of years. So we talked about that. We talked about CSUN. And then we also talked about the Mulholland history of the Mulholland overpass, and car culture, and different areas of the valley, including the General Motors assembly plant, and also different shopping centers that were used back then, like Orbox, and which is now the Valley Indoor Swap Meet. Different theaters and the entertainment industry, all the different landmarks, such as the different cultural landmarks, such as the Thai Buddhist Center. We talked about all the different food and restaurants, different history, classic restaurants, and the different cultures that they represent. So we talked about all these different landmarks, like the Sportsman's Lodge, the El Portal, Tonga Hut. And then I personally did a lot of interviews. Again, I did a very extensive interview with Steve Porcaro, who he's kind of an insider musician, and there's a lot of history of the music industry in the valley, and his family was sort of one of those iconic musical families where they were kind of the musicians at a time when session musicians were in high demand, songwriters. And this was all throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s. Their father was a very well-known drummer who worked in the film industry, doing film scores for all kinds of movies and television. And he moved out here in the 60s. So we go through a lot of the history of all the people that he worked with and what it was like in the valley back in those days up to today, and all the cultural landmarks, and different restaurants that they all hung out with, all the studios, the kind of businesses that were started back then by friends of his, for rehearsal studios. So it's a whole world of the music industry. And here you can see a quick collage of places iconic places in the valley, such as the baked potato. He talks about his song, Human Nature, and how that accidentally got discovered by Quincy Jones. And there's all kinds of interesting stories about how they created all this stuff in the valley, including this recording studio, Record One, and the music stores, the restaurants. And then I also spoke with Jolene and Vito Gregoli, who Vito is also a musician who grew up in the valley, and then Jolene was an actress, and their mom was an actress. So there was a lot of talk about the history of the entertainment industry in the valley and working at the studios and what that was like. Then I also talked to Kathleen Lacanoli, who worked in the music industry in the valley, and she's also a writer. So we talked a lot about what it was like to be on Van Nuys Boulevard during the car culture, cruising up and down Van Nuys Boulevard. And she was working in A&R and music, so she went to a lot of the clubs that were there back then. And so we talked a lot about the history, about the Olympics, the first Olympics in Los Angeles, and how she got to hold the torch and meet the archery team from Bhutan, and all the different places that she hung out in the valley, like the malls and the restaurants, and what it was like to grow up in the valley back then. And here is some more places that you can see that were very, like a lot of musicians got their start at these different places, like the Country Club, the Baked Potato, Charlie O's, Dante's, the Sugar Shack, Sash. And then there was also this tavern called Residuals, where actors used to hang out, and they used to get, if they had a residual under $1, they would get free drinks, basically. So, and then here's some more iconic places: Vitello's, Casa Vega, Dupar's, which is no longer there, but there's other locations, Farrell's and the Sportsman's Lodge, iconic history. And then we also included Valley Girl fashion, and we talked a little bit about that. So it's kind of a whole cultural landscape of the East Valley. And that's what we envision, creating maps where you could click on, like Siobhan has mentioned that in her website, where you can kind of click on different areas, like different restaurants, historical landmarks, and then perhaps have like a little story pop up or a video pop up to give you information about that restaurant, that the history of those different places that maybe people don't know about. But it would be pretty cool to put that on a map and have people have access to those stories and the history.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pam. That was wonderful. And we really appreciate the focus on culture, because sometimes after, everything happens somewhere, but after it happens, there's no marker of that unless the buildings there are people remember. And sometimes the buildings change what they're standing for. And so unless you were there and you experienced it, you've lost that cultural connection. So we believe sustainability is definitely tied to knowing the culture of people in place. And the car culture is something very important. So when we think of mass transportation, that we have to think about, how do those two things coexist? So great job. Thank you so much. And we're going to go on to our last student presenter, which is Sean. Thank you so much, Pam.
Thank you.
Can
Sean,
you see the screen?
Yeah, we can. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
we can hear you.
Awesome. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. And today I want to talk about and take you on a journey on a case study of World War II America that offers insights into sustainability, equity, and urban planning. Our subject specifically is Panorama City, It is one of the first planned communities in the San Fernando Valley, and it is honestly a microcosm of the broader shifts that shaped California, Southern California more specifically, and it continues to inform challenges in the present day. So first, I want to start off with the aftermath of World War II. The country was experiencing rapid growth and returning veterans needing jobs and homes. Now, this area of Panorama City provided a location for these returning GIs. Within this, Henry J. Kaiser and Fred B. Berman stepped in. In an ambitious move, they decided to purchase Panorama Dairy Farms to create 3,000 affordable homes, single-family homes, and apartments, specifically for returning GIs. Now wasn't just housing, it was community building, it was jobs, schools, commercial spaces, healthcare, all envisioned within reach within one community. Um, these homes were affordable for around $10,000 to $500 down payment. Veterans can use the GI Bill to move their families into the American dream right into the valley. And starting off right in the middle, we see attempts of racial segregation and redlining. And within this, it talks about home link, basically map and residential security map, defining what areas within the area are deemed at risk or are lower risk. Now, going into the 1950s, the success of Panorama City was in small part thanks to General Motors. In 1947, the General Motors plant began operations, producing vehicles like the Chevrolet Nova, the Camaro, the Pontiac Firebird, and within a few years, the plant employed 3,500 workers, solidifying Panorama City as an economic hub. It was a textbook case of industrialization meeting suburbanization. The rise, as we said in the last presentation, the rise of the car industry didn't just spur jobs, it defined Southern California car culture, influenced infrastructure, and drove the need for shopping centers like Panorama Mall and the Broadway department store. And within the 1950s, the stark reality of these dramatic shifts, there's a painful reality of explicit segregation of these communities. Um, so there was a part of our system that housing discrimination enforced through redlining, racial commands, and exclusionary zoning, as shown in the above right here. And then as this dramatic shifts turns, we provided a lot of images just detailing the dramatic shifts from the 1949 to 1953, just seeing the land use change and how dramatic and how fast it changed. But with all this social tension, by the 1960s, Panorama City began to change socially and demographically. In the 1960s, the civil rights protests took outside Woolsworth on Van Nuys Boulevard, mirroring the lunch counter protest in the South. 36 protesters marched for 6 hours, challenging the valley's history of segregation. Over here, we see Richard Nixon, a GOP candidate for governor, speaking at the Panorama Parade. And we also see that same decade, the Panorama Tower was built, and shockingly, the Ku Klux Klan Parade held in 1966, right on Roscoe and Van Nuys Boulevard. These tensions reflected the growing pushback against racial inclusion, while also revealing how deeply embedded those systems still were during this time. And as decades roll on, the Panorama City, like many industrial hubs within the valley, experienced de-industrialization. Now, when the GM plant closed, it didn't take jobs, it took stability. Thousands of blue-collar workers who didn't have access to higher education were suddenly left with few options. This created a cascading effect of economic instability, business closure, declining infrastructure, and rising poverty. In an attempt to get more of an idea of this, my father came to this country when he was about 12 years old, and came into this country, into this area, experiencing this dramatic shift from deindustrialization. Getting more context from him and asking him if we had any family members in this area who worked in these plants. And we had a cousin who worked as a general assembly person working in the factory. in an attempt to get more context clues, trying to reach out to my cousin, it was almost impossible, but still some familiarity within my family of this area. Um, so again, the decline of heavy industry, deindustrialization, terminating economic safety nets for thousands of people, and with a city of non-white working class and immigrant communities, there was a struggle to keep the fight manufacturing plants open. So within any heavy industrial area, we wanted to look at environmental factors. So we looked into the CalEnviro screen as an environmental health screening tool that identifies communities that goes burdened by population that are especially vulnerable under SB 535. Um, and then also, I wanted to look specifically at reported inventory. So this is a reported toxic release inventory of the Van Nuys plant, reporting the quantity of toxic chemicals releases for the heavy industrial site. And most of these chemicals, like trichloromethane and acetone, are typical chemicals used for heavy industrial in terms of finishing and for also refrigerant use. These are the heavy chemicals that are incredibly hard to discard of and can lead to land contamination. So as the period of deindustrialization in the 1990s, after the devastating 1994 Northridge earthquake, the city designated former GM site as part of the Northridge quake recovery zone, setting the plan for the area to redevelop in after even the earthquake to try to redevelop and take ownership of their area. So we wanted to connect different projects that are currently going on, such as the private and nonprofit development projects currently undergoing construction, completed by the City Council District, initiatives that include various housing solutions. The Icon and Perimeter City project is set to rejuvenate former sites in Montgomery Ward, and a 150 million project to occupy 8.9 acres in plans to construct more than 400 residential, along with 200,000 square feet of commercial space. And within our project, we wanted to include sites to visit. This is a very rich neighborhood with so many cultures. So it has been home to several local restaurants over the years. While some are closed, they remain significant in the area's culinary history. And we provided a map just of local areas and addresses where you can go and to find these areas and these restaurants. So in conclusion, so what does Panorama teach us, especially within sustainability? We often think sustainability as environmental, but Penn City teaches us sustainability also means economic durability, social inclusion, housing equity, and long-term planning. You can build a planned community, but if it's planned without justice, it will be eventually unravel.
Thank you, Sean. Outstanding job. Thank you, all three groups. Really great job. And that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, team. This city is so full of stories, and so many of those are not told. And, attaching this to the Olympics and really trying to tell the whole story of LA, I think is such a great initiative. I hope that this also inspires other communities to follow a similar model and share their stories as well. So wonderful work. Let's now hear from our panel. We've got about a half an hour of time for discussing how might we assess this, what are ways that we could, see even further impact in the project, what kinds of questions do we have, etc. And we've got two respondents with us today, Mark Spears and Siobhan Burke. Mark Spears is retired from a long career at Disney where he was Chief Sustainability Officer. And he too has played a big role in nurturing Pando projects in communities since the early days, including the founding of the CSO task force for LA County. He's involved in lots of different projects, including at USC, my home school, where he helps guide young entrepreneurs as well. And Siobhan is the founder of Lyric Design and Planning, a public space design office in Los Angeles. Recently, she has launched the 99 Neighborhoods Network nonprofit to advance inclusive placemaking for resilient communities. So thank you both for joining us. Why don't we go ahead and Mark, have you go first? Again, just a free-flowing discussion. Any observations or questions.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for this work. It is both comprehensive and complex, and it seems like there are so many layers to it. Not exactly sure where to start, but maybe one of those is the overall story here. I mean, I'm a native of the San Gabriel Valley, and I also realize how little I or probably anybody here living here now knows about the various stories here. I'm also a regular passenger on the A train from Pasadena to downtown and beyond. And it also strikes me at about every stop, you're looking at a chapter of a story that's currently not told and would be so beneficial and might even improve ridership. So maybe the question, because each of you told a bit of the story, is there an overarching story here that is going to tie all these various threads together, one, and then two, how do you envision hosting this story or series of stories for the various audiences that you're targeting?
Great. I'll take a first stab at that and then we'll turn it over to the students. But yeah, the overarching story is really about the importance of local knowledge and culture. And it's tied to sustainability. I think one thing I've tried to do in my role as director, I just started here in August, is to reframe how we think about sustainability and to say it's not just environment, people are part of that environment. Culture is part of that environment. When we look at the ridership on the train, I mean, so we wanted to focus, a lot of folks focus on transportation because when you live in this area, that's something you deal with every day. And but yet, considering the culture, if we didn't have the knowledge of the plants and the car cultures and like the Valley Girls and the music, we wanted to understand. I feel like I grew up 25 miles from here in Westlake Village, and I don't even know these stories, but I came back here. I'm like, the valley is a jewel of stories and people in place tied to the environment. That's really, I think, the overarching story. We want to create the sustainable San Fernando Valley, considering jobs, culture, people, place. And an important part of that is understanding and telling the story of history so that it doesn't get lost, right? So many important things happen, but if we don't document it and tie it maybe with rapid transit, the trains. I love your idea. I think that's a great idea. And this is where we were brainstorming together. My husband was involved too. He's geographic information officer for LA County, and he teaches at Claremont as well. So ideally we were going to create an app that then people could come to a place, click on something, understand the story. And that would be a future iteration for next year. He was going to have his Claremont students work on that. So I don't know. I'll let my students say anything too. Students, did you, Sean, Pam, Em, or Jen, you want to share any thoughts? Don't be
Could
shy.
you
You guys are
could you
smart.
repeat your question slash comment again, just so I know that I'm addressing it properly?
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna
Okay.
try. I think it's each of you have these rich stories, and they're all threads of a bigger story, or maybe they're chapters in a bigger book, if you want to use that comparison. How do you think about the broader story and the connection of the work that you all have done? One, and then secondly, how do you envision getting that out to the various target audiences that would benefit from it, engage in it, and react to it?
I think a lot of us were thinking because, we commute to class every week.
Right.
We're always driving. So naturally, in the San Fernando Valley, this sort of idea about transit and cars seems to have permeated all of our minds. And there's also this larger idea when connecting it to the Olympics. You want to get that culture connectivity, and we have a cultural connection to cars here, as well as the San Fernando Valley is sort of characterized by having these nice little pockets and little tiny places all around. That was something we found in our project. Sometimes you find a stop with a ton of Peruvian restaurants, or like this place has a really interesting, like small pocket of demographic. And so it's when looking at the San Fernando Valley, it can kind of seem scattered, um, and sort of like you're looking at something with no pattern, but the more you examine it, the more it sort of appears as this collage And I think our group sort of painted a picture of that collage, and it might seem a little disjointed. I believe we're also missing a group as well. But in terms of getting the story out, I know that what Dr. Steinberg said, there was something originally planned with accessibility that fell through with another college. So I'm not too sure in terms of that, but I think we all wanted to get our little bits of this collage of the San Fernando Valley. And with sustainability, cars and transport are the big picture here.
And work
Yeah.
with Siobhan to and her organization to get the word out. So really we want to translate the work that students do beyond the classroom and make it for the public. We know when the Olympics come, big money rolls, but little people can lose. So we are also thinking economic development. If you highlight a place, maybe people will come and eat at a local restaurant, and not just go to the fancy chains or something,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it was such a pleasure to be part of your class, Dr. Steinberg, and visit with the students and really start to test out these initial ideas. And I think Pam, you hit on it that, there is an interest in making the sites, I love the groundwork that everyone has laid out and really tapped into the history and beautiful interviews, Pam. And I love the personal stories, Sean, of your father, and how basically what this gets to is why does it matter? Why should I go somewhere? Why should I explore something new? And it's really about building up this curiosity that goes beyond anything you would find on Instagram or TikTok. And so I think maybe the next step is finding a way to cull these very meaningful stories into something that is participatory and interactive, where you click that button, where it's very much an action, on a phone. I want to hear a story of this neighborhood. I want to share my own story. I knew Sean's dad, or I worked with him, or I was in the next iteration, or take a survey. In the past couple of weeks, as an architect and urban designer, I've been working on some stuff in the Sepulveda Basin, reading the Sepulveda Basin Vision Plan, the Warner Center specific plan. There is tons of housing currently being built or already being built in the pipeline. There's metro joint development projects along the G line. So I've been working on that with LA Metro. And I think, yeah, going back into history, not just thinking about what is the future. We're oh, there was that industrial revolution, and this is what really laid the groundwork. Well, what is going to lay the groundwork for the future? And as I was going to say architects and urban designers, but as humans, we all want to build what community wants to see. And you can't do that unless you're really listening to what people have to say and hear what their needs are. And those needs are going to vary neighborhood by neighborhood. And so that was the whole impetus of founding the 99 Neighborhoods Network, and really thinking about how do we listen? How do we kind of use that to build up capital funds to build even small things like small pocket parks or plazas, or building that connection of a bikeway along the LA River to get you to the river. So I'm very excited to see all of the groundwork that's been laid.
How does the story map tech or platform factor into this, and why was it chosen?
Yeah, I'll answer that. It was chosen because, when you're trying to explain the relationship between people and the environment and sustainability, whatever topics, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? That old saying. And a map equally, but a map without the human component and the cultural component and the environmental component is missing something. So this is where the storytelling becomes very important. And Story Maps is a free software tool that the company Esri has designed. I've been teaching it for years with my students in various locations, and we found that it is a very impactful way. You can embed video, you can include music. You know, it's a great way to hit people, right? I mean, you know, Disney was masters of that with music and art, and you know, like hitting people with something. If you can relate it to them and they can feel like they're there and engage with it, really, that's it. So we wanted to provide context, environmental context, and share data in a way that is palatable, that is not like, here's a graph, do you like it? You know, I mean, no one's going to really get excited about a graph, but maybe a map or something with some pictures and stories, especially for that human element, becomes very powerful. And a lot of this data we're using is only local people would know it. And I was fortunate to have some local people in my class, you know, and some students who are very interested, like Jen Yu, visiting from Taiwan. She just as much got in there to gather data. So I don't know if that answered your question. The students may have a thought too.
Personally, I
Sounds-
find the story map, it's like it's like digestible, like especially I feel like we're in an age where it's like people just want like tiny bits of information. They don't want to like read a whole thing. So it kind of forces you to sort of just be like, okay, like what's next? And there's like a little bit of element of surprise to it. Yeah.
It strikes me, it offers I don't know, I'm thinking about it from, it's kind of a mashup of TikTok, Wikipedia, and Yelp. And to me, the lasting impact is not about the visitors coming in, say, for LA 28 or the World Cup. It actually is for the local communities, right? I mean,
Yes.
and I'm kind of curious how did you envision actually reaching out and having the local communities actually contribute actively to this platform? Because they're really the ones with the stories, right? I mean, we can do all the research we want, but until you get the man or woman on the street.
And the reason we did not do that is because of human subjects. So all research at CSUN is you have to go through a very arduous human subjects process to get interviews, to get signed releases so people's faces can be up there. What we did was these contacts came through the people that my students know, their family members, their friends, whoever, who were willing to talk to them, who would be okay that they got their information to share. But yes, ideally, we want to do more of that. I mean, that is really how I use GIS all the time, is to go out, capture the quality, the stories of people, reflect it back, give the knowledge back to the people. They have the knowledge. We just take it, repackage it, ship it back and say, hey, it's a great model that you're suggesting. How do we work with you? How do we engage with you? That would take some funding. We'd love to pursue that further, but that would take a little bit of funding and the right connections to do it. And going through some hoops at CSUN, but we could do it. Yeah. Longer time. We need more time than just, 15 weeks.
Or you could move it into a separate nonprofit that's not connected with the policies of the Cal State University system.
Yeah, and that's why we're working with Siobhan. I mean, that's the idea, is that we have a little flexibility there, but we wanted to start that process because labor is also very expensive. When students are working on this and it's their own project, they're doing this for the class. So, but I think it's a great model. Yeah, it's a great suggestion. You're right where we want to head.
How do you think about at the end? I mean, just thinking again, from a business perspective, we always have to pitch the business case, right? And return on investment, little generic there, but how do you think about the ultimate impact of your vision here and how you measure it?
Well, I believe that would be very interesting to do more of this kind of work that you're suggesting, to get out there. I think some surveys of people going to these different places to sort of make those relationships with some of these local businesses near the various stops, and get some sort of tool going with Siobhan that could help to bring in business, and then do sort of longitudinal, talk to the people at different points in time, maybe like 3 times a year, to circle back with them and see like how, and involve them in the process of sharing this information, whatever it is, whatever way we decide to do it, in an app. Not everybody has a smartphone though. you know, there's certain demographics that don't. But so maybe getting some printed versions that we could display, you know, identify those local community leaders and locales. There's always a restaurant where everybody goes who's local. There's always those like guardians of the community, the people who are there all the time, who know everything, like involving that aspect more. So we need that next piece of engagement with the community. How would we operate? How would the business case? I'm not quite sure. I think we have to figure it out. We'd like to help the businesses to make more money, and maybe tracking their income over time to see if it goes up once this gets implemented. We love to see that because too often the small guy loses to the big chains.
I think Mark's question is one that I've been thinking about a lot as I've been crafting my sort of vision for 99 neighborhoods, and I sort of see it as like a 5-part project that of which Dr. Steinberg's class took on one of them. And you know, so starting off with like a geospatial analysis, establishing a neighborhood ambassador program, having, you know, pop-up listening sessions, and so on. And then ultimately having it fold itself into placemaking innovations that are actually built.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about like the production cost over time. If you're doing this in several neighborhoods, goes down, and then the community benefits over time increase. So that's where I have like that model in my head. Now, how that translates into dollars is a tough one, but I think the way I was imagining it as well is that grant funding is often tied to or used to be tied to things like resilient communities. And we have things like the IOC principles for sustainability is definitely a mandate of LA 28. We also should be like asking more of our city and our county relative to, you know, contributing to these community benefits. Because what that ultimately does is it increases so say, for example, these tours facilitate like more use of transit or walking or biking, right? And like maybe on one of the story maps, you're able to like find an option for like a walking tour, a biking tour, a bus tour. That obviously in turn helps like increase the amount of activity, and you know, the more we build connections, pedestrian bridges across our rivers, and it's easier for kids to get to parks on their own, the more we're helping to reduce obesity rates. I think, Sean, you showed the CalEnviro screen and the environmental burdens. The more we can reduce those environmental burdens and increase the benefits, that's like, you know, how do you put that into dollars? I don't know, but you're putting funds into things that assist with the community.
Well said. Em, you were going to share something. Please go ahead.
And then Pam,
it'll be quick. Don't worry. So something we did our project on the restaurants surrounding the G line, partially because one of our members, Caroline, who's not with us today, she's graduated. Good for her. But one of the points she brought up with the Olympics especially is with these local restaurants in the area. We have a no car Olympics. We have all of these people. We need to sort of encourage people to get around. Why don't we do something that's also going to promote local businesses in the process? Because at the very least, maybe the Olympics can be an opportunity to sort of put money in those people's pockets and try and get, if we put eyes on them and sort of get people looking at them, then we can sort of solidify these restaurants' place in the community using these larger events and all of the people traveling to the valley. So that was a big part of our conceptual like design process, is how do we give this money to the community in a way, or direct it to it.
Excellent. Eugene, why don't we throw it to you?
Yeah, just quickly, I'm very impressed. I love, we don't have any, we've never had a Pando Days project that so emphasizes culture. And Sheila, you made a wonderful case for the relationship between that and sustainability. I think it's wonderful. I see a project like this as kind of almost literally thickening the connective tissue of communities and culture, and it's just kind of doing it very specifically. That makes me think, where do you think this is going concretely? Sheila, do you see another class next year that would pick up on this and then
Yeah.
build? I mean, will this stay going and
Yes.
develop out,
Yes.
or where is it going?
Yes, I'd like to see this become an initiative of the CSUN Institute for Sustainability. I partner quite heavily with the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies because I'm also a member over there. But that group brings the GIS, the geospatial, and as we say, everything happens somewhere. So I like to look for funding, for grants. You can get so far with classes, but the students are so creative and innovative, giving them a little space to work their magic. And I actually taught my class on a Saturday purposefully so we could go on field trips, so we could get out in the field, so we could get out of the classroom. And also as part of the class, I didn't tell you, we went to a lot of historic places like Valley Relics Museum. We went with some local experts to look at, overlook Simi Valley and where the various toxic things happen there on the toxic tour. We went on that. And we went to Boyle Heights, which is with a local activist who does a lot around the environment and people in place there. So my students had a great schooling on how you tell good stories, on the connection between people and place. I tried to provide that for them. I'd like to do this further. So I'd love to partner with Pando to see how can we take this idea, Mark and Siobhan, you guys are great. You have great feedback for us. We'd love to see how can we take it and make it bigger and better. Because this is something I've worked on. I've written books on this stuff. I do a lot in this area. It's my passion. And I love when students can be part of it because there's these people are so creative, these students. I mean, 100% for them, like they did the work. I was just up there talking like, oh, do this, like they did the work,
I mean, it strikes
I
me.
wonder if
LA,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Siobhan.
no, 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 no. I also know that Pam has had her hand up, so I don't want to.
Yes, please.
I was just going to say, I got so excited to actually go on those field trips because it really helped me to connect like, oh yeah, I've been in the Valley for a very long time. I, like going to the Valley Relics Museum and like just being like, oh yeah, I know all these things, and I know people that, and I envision like combining everything that I learned from you and from Siobhan and just kind of, this idea of like businesses being able to tell their story on a map and then or tell their history and like, oh, people that have been longtime residents or, just to have that come up on a map or an app or something like if you click on a restaurant or something, instead of it just being like pictures or whatever, maybe there's the owners telling the story or something like that. I mean, that could be a business idea. That's what I was thinking, but that's kind of what Siobhan's kind of doing. And I don't, but like, it's very inspiring it was very inspiring to be able to go around and go, oh, I'm connecting the dots.
And you have great history, Pam, and great connections. So thank you for bringing your own personal connections and local knowledge into it because that was wonderful. So thank you. I know Mark thank you. Your work was outstanding, by the way. Thank you. Mark, you had a comment?
Well, just it strikes me that the Chief Sustainability Office of LA County and LA Metro are two natural partners here because the CSO, the plan for the county really calls out a lot of the types of topics or issues that you've surfaced here. One, so theoretically they're pursuing them, and secondly, Metro, badly needs ridership, increased ridership, not just for the month of the Olympics, but year round. In particular, this kind of ridership would fall outside of presumably the general business hours, the workday hours, which would be kind of a complement to their overall mission. So, just it seems like there are some potential resources out there. The only other thing is when people ask me about LA who've never been here or perhaps just come in for business, I always describe it as a state of mind, in that it's 100 different communities and a multiple of cultures, right? There's no place. We don't have a Manhattan. We don't have a downtown Chicago. We don't have a Golden Gate Bridge. But we have this really vast community, and you can literally find anything you're looking for in it. But you do have to know how to sort of look for it.
Yeah.
So it just strikes me this is such a beautiful way to connect that together. And the Visitor and Convention Bureau, not only LA but all these cities would have a vested interest in this as well.
I agree. I was just gonna branching off of that. I think in addition to the county sustainability office and Metro, I think with plans for upcoming viewing hubs, Olympic and Paralympic viewing hubs for those who can't afford to get a ticket to the opening ceremonies or events. There will be obviously events happening in the Sepulveda Basin, like archery and BMX. Maybe archery has moved. Lots of moving targets, but working with County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath's office, the relevant city council districts, Imelda Padilla's, Bob Blumenfeld's, Nithya Raman, the relevant neighborhood councils, maybe even to like a next step for Sheila's class might be like, how do we, and I was thinking like maybe even like a design studio at Art Center College of Design and build some viewing hub tests and then use them for listening sessions for Sheila's class once Dr. Steinberg gets permission to do that. But it could be basically if like CSUN is facilitating listening with the permission of the county supervisor, that could really be a big win.
Yeah, we would love to do that. And I think that's applied work. And our students need applied skills. They need to get after it. And no better way to bring sustainability to life than to give people a chance to make an impact. And that's what these students are doing today. So we welcome your comments, and we'd love to roll forward. So Eugene and Mark and Siobhan and Matthew, love to stay in touch with you to see how we can push this effort forward, because we're just as excited about it as you all. We're glad you like it. And again, credit goes to the students for really, they put in like, these ones are the committed ones. They like showed up even though school is done. They're like, I'm coming. I'm going to talk. So that's good. Yeah.
That's great. Well, this is a great note to end on, everybody. Thank you again, Sheila and team, for the wonderful work, and Siobhan and Mark for your time and thoughtful responses as well. I wanted to let everybody know that the next premiere is in a couple of days, takes place this Wednesday, June 4th at 8 a.m. We'll be hearing from Los Angeles Trade Technical College. For now, thank you for joining us, and until then, Pando on, everybody.